adventure begins as the sun slowly sets behind the hill, leaving the sky adorned with reddish orange. Three friends walk happily, following the increasingly dark path between towering trees. The atmosphere feels peaceful, but the gentle twilight wind brings mysterious whispers that they ignore. This forest, although it looks beautiful and calming, holds a dark story that has never been told. A legend about wandering spirits looking for new victims. However, their cheerful laughter covers the bad feeling that they should feel. After a long journey, they found what seemed like the perfect place to spend the night. The flat ground and the surrounding trees gave the impression of safety and comfort. They began to unload their equipment with cheerful hearts, unaware that in this place, decades ago, a small child disappeared without a trace. The locals believed that the child's spirit still roamed, looking for a playmate, or perhaps a new victim. However, the sound of their cheerful laughter seemed to dispel the eerie silence that enveloped the place. With excitement and laughter echoing through the trees, they set up camp. Night slowly crept in, bringing with it a piercing chill. In the deepening darkness, the shadows of the trees looked like tall figures lurking in the distance. However, they were too busy joking and teasing each other to notice that since they arrived, the forest had become quiet, too quiet, with no sound of night birds or small animals. It was as if all living things had stayed away, afraid of something terrible. Campfire was burning, providing warmth in the cold night. The orange glow of the fire cast dancing shadows on the trees around them, creating a magical, calming atmosphere. However, behind the cheerfulness, there were a pair of small eyes lurking from behind the bushes, eyes full of curiosity and revenge. They didn't realize that their presence had awakened something that shouldn't have been awakened. Under the dark, star-filled night sky, they enjoyed a simple dinner. Their laughter and stories echoed through the silent trees. They felt safe and comfortable, unaware that beneath the darkness, something was watching them, waiting for the right moment to show itself. Something that had long inhabited this forest and did not like the presence of uninvited guests. The atmosphere changed when Bayu began to tell the legend of the ghosts believed to inhabit this forest. His voice was deep and slow, creating a tension that made the hair on the back of your neck stand on end. He told the story of the spirit of a small child who was lost and never found. A spirit who is said to still wander around looking for a playmate. Will take anyone he meets to accompany him forever. The forest that had previously felt peaceful now turned into a place full of dark shadows and vague sounds that were difficult to explain. The laughter and jokes suddenly stopped when the sound of a twig breaking was heard from inside the forest. The sound was clear, disturbing the silence of the thick night. They looked at each other with confused and anxious looks. Bayu tried to convince himself that it was just the sound of a nocturnal animal, but his own heart was not entirely sure. Behind the darkness, something was watching them and approaching slowly without a sound. Out of the corner of her eye, Rina saw a shadow moving through the trees, fast, faint, and mysterious. She tried to convince herself that it was just a gust of wind or the shadow of leaves. But the more she looked, the clearer the shadow became. It resembled a small figure with red eyes staring intently at them. Rina's heart was beating fast, but her voice was caught in her throat. The sound of a child's laughter suddenly sounded, breaking the silence of the night. The sound sounded close, but there was no one there. A low, high-pitched laugh, as if playing hide-and-seek in the dark. Their hearts seemed to stop beating. The laughter was unnatural, echoing and surrounding them, getting closer and closer. They realized that Bayu's story was not just a legend. Something in this forest was real and was playing tricks on them. From the darkness of the forest, the small figure appeared, silent, unmoving, and staring straight at them with burning red eyes full of hatred. Its body was shapeless, just a dark silhouette standing stiffly among the trees. Bayu dared to shine his flashlight on the figure. In an instant, the shadow disappeared as if blending into the darkness of the night. But they knew the figure had not left. It was still there, lurking and waiting for the right moment to pounce. Fear crept into their bodies as the shadow appeared behind Rina slowly. Like a creeping black mist, the figure approached without a sound. Blazing red eyes full of hatred lurked sharply. Rina stood still, unaware of the danger that was so close to her. Bayu and Dika were frozen in fear, their mouths open but no sound came out. Something terrible was there, shadows of the night. He screamed in panic, warning Rina about the shadow behind her. However, when Rina turned her head, there was nothing there, only the silent and cold darkness. They began to feel an inexplicable strangeness, as if something was playing with them, playing hide and seek in the darkness of the haunted forest. The whispering voice came softly, but so clearly in Rina's ears. The voice of a small child laughing softly and calling her name in a spoiled tone. "Rina, let's play." The voice sounded so real, as if the child was standing right beside her. But when she turned her head, there was no one there, only thick darkness and haunting silence. Bayu and Dika didn't hear anything, but Rina's frightened face made them even more anxious. The small footprints were clearly visible on the wet ground, small like those of a child and still wet as if they had just been made. The footprints led into the dark, dense forest. Bayu touched the footprints with trembling hands, feeling the cold mud sticking to his skin. There was no sign of anyone there, but the footprints continued to stretch into the darkness. It was as if someone or something was walking among the trees, watching them from afar. The tent shook as if someone was inside trying to force their way out. Bayu approached the tent with hesitant steps, his hand shaking as he held the zipper of the tent door. With one quick tug, he opened the tent door. However, the tent was empty. There was nothing inside. Only cold darkness and damp air enveloped it. However, a strange feeling enveloped them, as if someone was hiding in the darkness, watching their every move. The shadow moved quickly, passing through the trees with light, nimble steps. Red eyes flashed for a moment before disappearing into the darkness. Dika froze, his body stiff as if all his energy was drained by fear. He knew the figure was not human, something that should not be here, now watching them. The touch felt real, cold, and penetrated her skin to her bones. Rina turned around, but only darkness greeted her. Bayu and Dika were unaware of anything that had happened. She looked at her own shoulder, the hairs on the back of her neck standing up. The touch was so cold, as if the hand of an inanimate creature had just touched her. Her eyes sounded sad, heartbreaking, as if a child was lost and scared. His voice trembled, calling out to someone who never came. But there was no child there. Only the cold, silent darkness. The cry echoed as if coming from all directions, filling the increasingly suffocating night air. The shadow stood still, its eyes glowing red with a blank stare that pierced the darkness. The small body did not move, but its presence felt very real and cold. Dika was frozen in fear, unable to look away. However, in the blink of an eye, the shadow simply disappeared as if it had never existed. The small footprints circled the tent, forming a perfect circle. Each step was clear, deep and wet, as if something had been walking around their tent all night. The footprints ended right in front of the tent door, stopping as if their owner had been standing still watching them sleep. Rina covered her mouth, trying to hold back the scream that threatened to overflow. There was no child here, but the footprints were there, real and terrifying. They ran nonstop, gasping for breath and exhausted. But every time they reached the end of the path, they returned to the same place. Their tent stood there, silent and eerie. Bayu began to scream in despair, while Rina cried in fear. They were trapped in an endless loop, like toys being played with by something evil and unseen. The figure stood at the end of the path, not moving an inch. Its face was pale with empty, yet hateful, glowing red eyes. A thin, cold smile graced its small face. A smile that was unnatural and terrifying. Their bodies froze, a chill running down to their bones. The figure was not human and definitely not of this world. The shadow hovered over the tent, moving silently, watching with an eerie presence. Its shape shifted, curling as if dancing in the darkness. As they stared with bated breath, the shadow simply vanished, vanishing into the cold, silent night. But the fear remained, gripping and haunting. The sound came slowly, a long creaking sound as if sharp nails were scratching the tent fabric. The sound was piercing to the ears, vibrating in the silence of the night. Bayu held his breath, Rina cried silently, and Dika hugged his knees in fear. They knew there was something out there, something waiting in the darkness. The hand just appeared from the ground, gripping Rina's ankle tightly, cold and muddy, with long, sharp nails. Rina screamed hysterically, trying to pull her leg away, but the grip was so strong. The hand moved slowly, crawling up as if trying to drag her into the ground. Calm surface of the water reflects Bayu's frightened image. But the image changed. A small child's face appeared under the water, pale with piercing red eyes. A terrible smile adorned the ghost's face, an unnatural and scary smile. Bayu froze, his body stiff, unable to look away from the eyes that cursed him. The chuckle echoed through the trees, sounding like a child's carefree laughter. But there was something wrong. It was filled with cold malice and falsehood. A small shadow peeked out from behind the tree, staring with glowing red eyes and a smile that twisted their stomachs. Figure was playing with them like a cat plays with its prey. The whisper sounded soft in his ears, the voice of a child calling his name in a sweet tone. But something was wrong. The voice was full of deceit and hatred. Dika turned his head quickly, but only darkness greeted him. The shadows around him felt like they were moving, getting closer and suffocating. He felt stalked, played with by something invisible but very real. The hand suddenly appeared from inside the tree, gripping Rina's shoulder with a cold and terrifying strength. Its skin was pale and muddy, with long, sharp nails like claws. Rina screamed hysterically, struggling to get free, but the grip tightened, trying to pull her into the tree. Something inside wanted to take her away, into eternal darkness. The figure stood in the middle of the circle of small footprints, motionless like a creepy statue. Its red eyes were sharp, staring with blood-curdling hatred. A horrifying smile was etched on its pale little face. Slowly, its tiny hand rose, pointing at them in a slow, creepy motion. It had made its choice, and it would not let them go.